Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Santos on Sports. Alongside Chris, I am Paul as usual. And sitting in between the two Santos is a gentleman who is really a hockey guru, I have to say. Also a great educator there at Dartmouth High School. He's been the coach of Dartmouth High School hockey for the last 24 years, another 7 years before that as assistant coach. And he drops a bombshell on us. He is retiring after all that time. Welcome to the show, Mr. Michael Cappello. Mike, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Good to see you guys.
All right, so the first question is, why now?
Well, there was no plan for this. When I was looking at, I've been coaching for 31 years and I love it and still will be a big fan of the program and supporter as best I can. But, as you get older, you got family things going on. We've had some illness in our family. So, it was a good time to throw some more support my wife's way, who's been just tremendous over the years, kind of holding down the fort at home while I, basically disappear over the winter. So that's one of the reasons. And, part of me feels like it's time. I've really enjoyed it. But, you also know when it's time to go, you kind of get a sense of, I love practice. That's my thing, and game day. And still got a feeling for it, but maybe not as much in the past. And, it's I think I've kind of looking for someone new to get the program going. And one of the things that we've talked about before is there's only been 2 head coaches in the history of the program. Bob Hayes was a head coach for 27 years, and I've been the head coach for the last 24 years. So, it'll be nice to, get some new people involved and some young guys involved as well. So
I played under Bob Hayes and at the same time have coached against this gentleman right here, Mike Cappello. But let's put hockey aside, Paul. This is about an educated man, a class act. Nothing can say anything bad about this man and what he has done for Dartmouth High and their hockey program, as well as in the educated system. So it has been a complete pleasure to know Michael, coach against him, but a better person than even a head coach. And it's been a pleasure, Michael. Great to have you along. And I wish you nothing but the best in retirement.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's goes back a while. We kind of actually coached together, coached against each other. We've seen each other around the rinks for a long time, and as both as teaching the same subject. I know we've crossed paths in the education world as well. So I appreciate what you said, and it means a lot.
And I agree 100%. And picking up on Chris's point, most people know, but not everybody knows you're an educator, but you deal with special needs kids. Tell me about your job, and you're still going to be doing that job.
Yeah, so I've been the adaptive phys ed teacher in the Dartmouth school system for the past 31 years. And basically my job is I work very closely with the physical therapists, the occupational therapists, and the phys ed teachers. And we really work on helping kids who need support access the phys ed curriculum. So working on gross motor skills and just helping their daily living skills throughout, movement throughout the buildings to, accessing the curriculum. And I love it. I've been doing it, prior to Dartmouth. I was an adaptive phys ed teacher in Milford, Mass. So it's one of the things that's my real job. As much as I love to say I'm a coach and everything, but I love teaching adaptive phys ed. I love the system here. The kids I work with, also heavily involved in Special Olympics and helping start the unified programs here and many programs like that that support students with special needs. So that's certainly been kind of like the highlight of my career when I look at it.
Yeah, Special Olympics, Paul. That is something that Mike and someone from our school has recently retired, Denise Belanger, had really taken over in this area. And I have to thank those 2 people because I've seen the excitement when those kids come back to my school and what Michael and Denise had done for them. And in the New Bedford system, obviously it's Denise, but I know he knows her. And what they do for this group, it is something special because it brings a lot of smiles to their faces. And when they come back, and you see medals around them and what they've accomplished and established. It's a great plan. And Mike, congratulations on that as well. And I hope that continues on as long as you're there and you pass the torch with that as well.
Yeah, and I hope I know it will. I know here in Dartmouth, and to speak on Denise, she's fantastic, and it's been great working with her and really kind of having a nice connection, not just with New Bedford, but her and I have worked together with Durfee School and a few other schools to, really get the entire, the Southeastern community together. But yeah, we have a lot of young people here in Dartmouth that are, have really jumped on board for, these unified sports and Special Olympics. So that's been great. A lot of them have been students of mine, a lot of them hockey players that, I'm thrilled that they're getting involved and finding different career paths in the same thing that I've done. So, it's been great. We got a nice kind of building block to work on from here. So I'm sure it'll just get bigger.
Fantastic. Well, talking about the coaching a little bit, it's not just about trying to win games and the competition side of it, as Chris pointed out, being a leader and being a role model and all that. But looking back, there are some fantastic memories over the years on the competitive side. And one thing that jumps out at me is that Dartmouth Stang rivalry. I mean, they used to say when my kids were playing, and both of my kids had a great time playing for Coach Cappello, there were 2 seasons. There was the 2 Dartmouth Stang games, and then there was the whole rest of the season, and then there was the state tournament. I mean, that is one unbelievable hockey event where the fans come in and there's 1,000 people in the arena, and wow, what excitement. What's your great memories from some of those great Stang games? And of course, you got Kenny Govert and Paul Brussel's on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back before those guys with Tim Drew and Eric Labonte, and, kind of started up when Stang started their program. They struggled at first, and then all of a sudden they really built it up. And, we started having fantastic games with them. And, I look back to one of the games that, when they beat us 2-1 in overtime. I think it was with Labonte and Drew the year that maybe it was the year before they went to the state championship. But again, those memories of like people telling me that people are lined up outside the building, they're tailgating before our games. Our players every year we try and set some goals. And, the first one is like, we got to beat Stang is one of our first goals. Clearly we want to make the tournament. I like to keep that as my number one goal, but for the players, it's beat Stang first. And then, we're going to get to the tournament. There's been so many games back and forth. We've split with them so many times along the way. We usually play them in our tournament, in their tournament. And I've seen them in the MIA tournament as well. So great rivalry. It's kind of like a strange thing. People think we hate each other, but here we practice together at the same rink. We're on the ice before them or they're before us. Our kids all know each other. They play together in the off season. Game day, I don't think they're friends, but when the game's over, it's one thing about hockey. You see it in college, you see it in the NHL. When the game's over, there's always a celebration with both teams, and when there's that type of battle that's going on. So, there's been just, I don't know, I count how many games. There's been overtimes, there's been shootouts, there's been 1-goal games. I mean, you've seen everything along the way, including, your son getting an overtime goal. There's been a lot of great memories along the way against Stang.
Well, before Chris picks up on the next question, I'll tell you, in our family, Dylan was probably the better player. I mean, he was one of your leading goal scorers one year and all that kind of scrappy guy. Wasn't he like 5'7", and then he'd go in front of the net and take a beating? You remember that? Kind of like the scrappy guy trying to get the rebounds and all that stuff. It was a lot of fun watching him. And then Andrew, he come in here and there, and on that game, he came out in overtime, got a breakaway. I'm standing in the stands, he's coming in, and I'm like, I can't believe Andrew's got a breakaway. So it just kind of comes in and all of a sudden clink right off the crossbar. And unfortunately, it was one of the few games that were not on DCTV. But I'm up there with the fans and I'm like, wow, this is great. I get to be a parent today, not an announcer. And we still talk about that now, 10 years later or 15 years later, wherever it was. So some great memories there, Coach.
Yeah, I always get texts around the time we're playing Stang from former players, just wishing us luck, but also just kind of reliving some of the memories. And I've usually, at the end of the year, we have our banquets and stuff. And I like to make videos for these guys or CDs that, not CDs now, but however we can collect that information, the games, and pass them along. So they all want that game. Everybody wants the Stang game. They don't really care about other games, but that's the one they want. And they certainly always talk about it. And you'll see players from both teams just, lining along the glass for those games. And to go back to Dylan, he was one of the scrappier players we've ever had. He got some dirty goals, and he was as tough as they come too. And he was a fun guy to have. And Andrew scored big goals and was a great kid to coach too. I mean, so I appreciate your guys playing for me, because guys like that are guys that I would love having on our teams.
Well, Paul, I was actually involved in this as well. We used to have the New Bedford High Christmas hockey tournament. And obviously we would play Vogue and Dartmouth would play Stang. And me and Mike used to talk during those 2 games. He would give me his advice about Vogue. I might give some advice about Stang. And we try to obviously win and meet in the finals. And if we did, of course, we didn't talk the next day because we're going against them. But we try to help each other at least in the semis, and then get ready to play each other in the finals. So that was such a great time back then, and just a lot of fun. But I think Mike can really shout out, what he's had with the camaraderie with his teammates, whether it's coaches, whether it's players, and not only that year that he has them, but when they're done, Paul, and how much they've come back. Because I've seen alumni games, and there's tons of Dartmouth kids. I've seen kids talk about Mike Cappello 10 years after graduation. And so I think that's what you get the most out of head coach Mike Cappello. When you talk to players who played for him, the respect they have for him later on in their careers, whether they're in hockey, whether it's just life itself, his name comes up.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, that's something I think it's important. And we talk, and Paul alluded to this earlier. We talk clearly. It's not just about hockey. We talk about life, and I've had some unbelievable assistant coaches who are just great with that too. There's not many better game speeches you're going to find than what Brian Rose delivers, and talking way more about hockey, but about life. And what better than a professional athlete who's kind of been through a lot of this stuff, but just to talk about the important things in life and our family and everything else as we go through it. And it's been just fantastic. And Derek Martin as well. I mean, those guys have been just phenomenal assistant coaches, and could both easily be head coaches. They know their stuff. They know their X's and O's, and they know, what's really important here, and it's well beyond hockey, but just as a team getting together and moving forward and becoming better citizens and kind of growing up, and having some accountability and teaching all those things that we try and teach in school, Chris. So it's nice when kids come back and you see that, you feel like, it's not, you love the wins. Don't get me wrong. I love to win, but it feels good when you talk to some, when I announced the retirement, just been inundated with, texts and calls from players, and, talking about myself and Coach Rose and Coach Martin. And it's a nice feeling.
You seem to be calm there on the bench. I look at the bench, and some coaches get a little wound up there on the bench. I know that the emotions are running high, especially in those big state tournament games or those games against Stang. But as a leader, obviously someone that you're trying to set an example for the students, I guess I have to ask you, how do you remain so composed in these big games? Because I've talked to you, we always interview you on DCTV right after the game, and sometimes it's either a big win or a big loss, and you always seem to have that even keel. I mean, I remember going up and said, oh my God, what a tough overtime loss. And overtime, they're like one game away from the Garden, and they just missed the game. And you talk to Coach Cappello, and he's, obviously disappointed, but you're calm, and you're trying to show the kids that, hey, it's not all about the win.
Yeah, I think it's important how your players are going to reflect, how you handle situations. And again, I learned this the hard way, early on. We probably didn't talk that much because I wasn't always like this when I first started coaching. I kind of let my emotions get the best of me and probably tried to blame an official or something along the way. But, I kind of, with experience, you grow up as you do with anything else. You learn as you're going, and, you try and become a role model the more you possibly can. And, I know that, how my emotions will dictate the players' emotions as well. So if I'm out of control, my players are going to be out of control. So, you need to be able to portray that in the game, and inside you might be, churning pretty fast, but in the big picture, I think it's important that, discipline and accountability and making good decisions is what will help you win the game in the long run.
Yeah, it's funny, Paul, because I had a coach who was 360 opposite than what Coach Cappello was. I can tell you that. And what I had in my years, so we used to call Mike the silent assassin. He was very quiet, but we knew the wheels were turning in there and what he was going to come up with next. And so I'd always get approached and say, what do you think he's thinking? What do you think he's thinking? I said, I can't tell. He looks the same as he always does. He never changes. So you can tell some of the difference between coaches. But, going against them, being with them, it was just so much fun. And, the mentality, Paul, every coach has their own particular style. And Mike Cappello had his style, and kids took to it. And that's all you cared about. As long as they took to it and they followed what he wanted to put into perspective, that's all you can ask for in a coach. And he did it.
Well, let me ask you this, Coach. Now, I know that I've been announcing those games for a long time, and people used to ask me, is it difficult announcing a game when your kid is playing in the game? And the answer to that is yes, it is hard because, I don't want to be a Yahoo, but on the other hand, I just want to announce the game like I would ordinarily announce the game. So it's actually easier when they left, but I loved announcing the games when they were playing, of course, But then both Andrew and Dylan came on as color guys. Dylan was doing it for a while and Andrew was doing it for a while. So then sometimes, the coach would either pull the goalie too soon or he wouldn't pull the goalie early enough or there's some kind of thing like that. So we try to make an entertaining broadcast. We say, hey, I don't think Cappello should be pulling the goalie here. He's going to give up an empty net goal, And they give up an empty net goal. And after I think, oh, gee, when they're watching the tape, hopefully they're not saying, what are these guys talking about over there? So being second guessed by announcers or parents, what's that like for a coach like you who has so much knowledge about the game?
I think it happens a lot. And again, I'm sure I've made a lot of mistakes in during coaching as we all have. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you gotta really feel comfortable with what you're doing. And I know I've made mistakes along the way and tried to make what's in the best interest of the team, some of the decisions, and try and do that as a coaching staff. We certainly work together and talk on the bench. But yeah, what's interesting is your son Dylan, when he does some play-by-play, when we watch film sometimes, he usually comes up with some good points along the way when we're breaking film down. And Coach Rose is always like, did you hear what Dylan said? Let's make sure we work on that. Forecheck is going to change, that type of thing. But yeah, it's just part of coaching. You're going to get it no matter what level you're coaching at. I think it's always there. You just got to be confident in what you're doing and feel good about what you're doing. And, and if you make a mistake, you learn from it, and you think about it next time. I know anytime that we lost or any situation, I always go back and reflect upon what I could have done better and, try and apply that the next game. And it's so situational that, it's you try and become better at it on the fly. And like I said, I talked about my assistant coaches, and those guys talk about in between periods and making adjustments. They were just so good at it. And we were all on the same page most of the time. If we weren't, we were able to work through it. But, sometimes you disagree, sometimes you make mistakes, but you work through it because you're all kind of in it for the same reason, trying for the same ultimate goal. But, I think we'll get second guessed in everything we do from teaching to coaching. So it's just part of it.
Mike, as you look back on those 31 years, is there a particular season, game, player, something that sticks in your mind that will always be there and say, this is how it happened. This is what it was like. And I was, really fortunate to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's probably a couple. I mean, we went undefeated the year, I think it was 15-16. And that was the year we had our goaltender was Tyler Martin, who was just unbelievable that year. And we had Scott Chirac, which by far was the most gifted offensive player. And to take nothing away from all the players that I've coached, offensively, he was something else. He just could score at will. And those are a couple of amazing players, and Garrett Sylvia and Jack Aruda. That group was as tough as you could get. And, we go undefeated during the season with one tie. We end up losing in the semifinals to Hanover 3-2. Just one of those games. It was a fantastic season, but a season that I remember being so much stress because we were undefeated. Every day we're talking about, are they going to lose? It's almost like I'm part of me is thinking, if we lose, is that a better thing? Or, what's going to happen here? But it was a season certainly that I think everybody will kind of, who's been around Dartmouth hockey community, will remember. I mean, there's lots of individual games. I can remember a shootout. And I saw one of the DeMello brothers, Josh, who scored the winning goal. It was like 10 deep in a shootout. I think our goalie was Ryan McCarthy at the time against Abington East Bridgewater. It was a tournament game. And I love this story because I think it's a funny story. We do the shootout. It's 5-5 in the shootout. And now we got to pick our sixth guy. We pick our sixth. We don't score. Now we're down to our 10th guy. No one's scoring. I'm looking at the bench and there's nobody looking at me. And Josh DeMello turns around, looks at me, and we call him. He goes in. He roofs it. We win the game. It was just like I probably wouldn't have picked him. It's the fact that he just was the only guy looking at me at the time. So there are games like that you think about, like you make these decisions based on some different things. But there's been a lot of games. Beating Stang in the tournament, the semifinal tournament. They had just beat one of the best teams in the state, Hopkinton, coming to that game, and they were flying, and we were playing well. We had just beat the Vineyard, and the game was at Gallo. The place was just crazy. And we scored early and we were able to hold on to that game. I think it was a shutout 4-0. And that's another game I think that, we will remember for a long time. But, there's lots of games here and there. But those two seasons, those games kind of stick out for me.
You mentioned Scotty Chirac, really class young guy, great talent, really good kid. And you mentioned he scored an overtime goal down there in Bourne, and what a great goal that was. And people went bananas. And your goaltender, you talked about Tyler Martin. He had made a save with like 5 seconds left that broke off his pad, trickled and hit the post. right before
Right,
the
right.
game went into overtime. So
That was the game. That was against Rockland. That was the game we won 3-2 when Scotty went end to end to win that game, and that put us into the finals against the semifinals against Hanover. But yeah, I know it's moments like that you walk out of there. I'm just glad I didn't drop from a heart attack watching that game. That you're trying to coach, and sometimes you can get caught up in the game when it's like that, and you try, that's not your role, but you become, as much as you're the coach, sometimes you become like a fan watching like what Tyler Martin did and what Scotty Chirac was able to do, and Jack Arruda and Garrett, those guys were just tremendous, and I have a lot of players like that, and you certainly guys that I respect so much and really enjoyed coaching, and have learned a lot from in the process. It's like, while I'm hoping they're learning from us, we're learning from them at the same time. So
I was asking you about being calm on the bench. I can remember a couple of times where I wasn't announcing a game. I'm just at the game, and there was a game down at the old Barnstable rink. It's so cold down there and everything. And the other team scored a goal, and the net was off the moorings, and so we're yelling at the referee. I'm sorry to say that I got kind of into it. I'm like, it's off, the net's off, you idiot, the net's off, what's the matter with you? So then Ryan McCarthy, we still joke about this, Ryan McCarthy turned around and said, hey, come over here for a second. He moved the net up, went clink. So we're like, oh, good. He showed him that the net's off. That means the goal's not going to count. Nope, the goal still counted anyway. We lost, So, I mean, there were aggravating moments like that, too, that you can remember going, oh, man, I can't believe we lost the game because of this thing, But that happens in a game, You get lucky sometimes, and sometimes the other team gets lucky.
Yeah, we've been on both sides of it. You can't, unfortunately, once an official makes a decision, we're not going to find any instant replay in high school hockey. So, these kind of things happen, and it's how you bounce back from it too. Cause sometimes you can go crazy about something, and then all of a sudden you have taken your team right out of it because it becomes excuse city. And we want to avoid that as much as possible. So, and I did that early in my career. I would get too emotional about something, and next thing you know, our team's focus would lose it. So yeah, you see that in high school hockey, but I give our officials a lot of credit. It's not easy to be a high school official. You got people screaming and yelling at you nonstop. And, for the most part, most years once we get to the tournament, especially, we've had some pretty good officiating, and, the ones that haven't been great. I mean, it's, it becomes part of the game, but, it's not an easy position. And I would, not something I would want to do. I can tell you that.
Well, two things, Mike. I'm sure we'll still see you around the rink every now and then to catch a big game here and there. But number two, very happy on your retirement. Nothing but the best for you, and good luck with that. And on number three, whatever you do, and you continue to help out the Dartmouth program and even the hiring of the next coach, if he's half anything like you are, Dartmouth's still going to be in great hands, and it's going to be another maybe 27 to 30-year head coach for the Dartmouth High Indians. So as an alumni of Dartmouth, wishing you nothing but the best, and good luck with the future coach coming up. And I hope you have a lot of input in that as well.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be part of this program in any way, and being a supporter and as much as I possibly can. And you'll see me around the rink. I'm sure I'll be a game admin some days, and I can't just completely walk away from it. And it's and I hope the same. I hope we find someone that is the right fit, and moves the program forward. And I'm sure Andy Christofouli, as our AD, is he's going to be working hard at that over the next couple of weeks. And I know it's close to the start of the season, which is not ideal. I made this decision over the summer, and these processes sometimes take a little long, but whoever they find, I'm sure will be set up in the right way, and I'm sure they're going to find someone with some experience. So looking forward to seeing this season with the new coach.
Well, the assistant coaches are leaving as well, so it's going to be a whole new staff over there. We wish them all the best of luck. I'm sure that Coach Cappello is only a phone call away. And by the way, we've been doing this podcast called Santos on Sports, and once in a while we like to reach out to some local knowledgeable people, even when the Bruins are in the playoffs or something like that. So I'm sure we can reach out to Mike Cappello and have him come on and be one of our analysts. That would be a lot.
Would love to. There's my retirement gig right there.
He's got time now, Paul. He's got time.
Oh, anytime I can talk hockey, I love it. It is one of the things, like when I think about myself, Coach Rose, Coach Martin, it's like one thing we love to do, and Tyler Martin as well, who's been a big help to the goalies. We love talking hockey, and so yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you giving me the time today kind of talk about this, which is not always something that's easy for me, not something I typically do, but I certainly appreciate it. And you guys have been great supporters of the Dartmouth hockey and Dartmouth hockey family. And it's always great to see you guys around the rink. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of you too as the season starts.
Well, we'll let Mike Cappello do his main thing, which is teach class, which he has another class in about 10 minutes, I understand. We really appreciate you taking time to speak with us here on Santos on Sports. I echo the words of Chris. You've been a great ambassador for the game, a great leader for the hockey program. We wish you all the best of luck in your retirement. And, you're a young guy. You got a lot more to give here. So we'll see.
Not that young, but yeah, I'll take that.
All right. Thanks very much. Mike Cappello.
Thanks, guys. All right. Take care.
Here on Santos on
Thanks,
Sports.
Mike.
Have a great afternoon, everybody.
We'll see you.